The two questions I had is that which city are you joining in from right now? It's always good to see like people joining in from different places. Which city and state? And what are your financial goal for 2025? So I'll also answer. I'm joining in from New York City, and my financial goal is to like invest more on passive income assets like stock and bond. That's basically my focus. But you can basically like just type. I don't know if we can afford everyone answering in audio. So if you can just type those answers, that would be great. Which city and what is your goal, financial goal for 2025? Can be, I don't know, tax saving, budgeting, increasing net worth by 10%, whatever, like just whatever comes to your mind. Okay, cool. Mohina shared something. New York and learn more about investing as a student. That's an interesting thing. NYC and investing. Wow. NYC and investing seems like a theme for tonight. We have Tashfiq from Florida. At least 50% return on investment. Great. Yeah, Tashfiq, once you figure it out, please just share it with the team so that we all know how to get that annually. Vivian did a good one. Vivian is from Atlanta and basically move money from mine to his. Sounds good, man. I'll send you all the small pennies I have. Sarah is from Princeton, um, still working on it, rebuilding emergency savings, and then continues to max out on tax advantages on HSA, Roth IRA. Awesome, yeah. Those are cool ones, yeah.
Sounds like we should probably talk about investing too, which I can definitely dip into if that's what the crowd wants to talk about. I can give all my tips for how to do that.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Vivian definitely wins. We should all send money to Vivian. All right. So anyone else wants to share? We have 1 more minute and then we'll start prompting. There are some few people joining. If you could just type, that would be extremely helpful instead of like talking, because there will be more and more people joining. So which city you are joining in from, and then what are your financial goals for 2025? All right, I'll also give an idea about the agenda for today. So we'll take like 20-25 minutes where Sarah will share some of her wisdom, and then we'll keep the last half an hour for Q&As. So whatever question you have while Sarah is making the presentation, just like instead of like keeping it in your head, just type it so that we don't forget it. And then I'll make sure that whenever we are going for the Q&A session, we are prioritizing how you ask your questions on. So I think we can just jump in. Okay, one more. Ivy Sioux Fall. I think it's in Idaho. I do not know how to pronounce the name of the city. Investing on stocks as F1 students. Sounds good. Investing is the name of the game today. First of all, I just wanted to introduce Sarah. I met Sarah actually in Adro's launch party, and I'm so excited to have our first workshop/webinar together. And I loved their mission. I wish they existed when I came here as an international student. And yeah, and we have been hanging out a couple times already. I have actually had a lot of fun playing poker with her one night. But anyway, I'll actually pass it to Sarah to make introduction about her and what they're doing at Adro. And yeah, thanks a lot for doing this for us.
Of course. I definitely want to make this useful for you guys. So I'll give you kind of a short run through of a lot of different topics about US finance, and then we can dig into the questions that you have. So first, also, poker is not a great way to make money. Even if you're good at it, that's probably not the most reliable investment strategy. Just pro tip there. All right, can you guys see my whole screen? Am I sharing the right view? Excellent. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm the co-founder and COO of Adro. I'll tell you a bit about that in a moment. So I work in the financial services and fintech space. I got my MBA from Cornell, and I'm originally from upstate New York. So I've spent most of my life on various places around the U.S., always cold places: Madison, Wisconsin, Seattle, Washington, Buffalo, of course, is very snowy, and now New York, New Jersey. I just closed on my first home. I bought an apartment in New York City yesterday, so I'm happy to answer questions about the co-op buying process if anyone wants to know. That may necessitate its own session. It is quite the undertaking. Please feel free to ask me anything about U.S. banking, entrepreneurship, travel, investing. I'm a very active and avid investor. I have a bunch of different strategies that I use. I'm also an angel investor in startups. So while I have both traditional investments in the stock market as well as real estate investments, I'm also kind of hedged in a little bit more risky space as well. So yeah, happy to share about all the things. I've been paying taxes in the U.S. for a long time too, so that'll be a component of what we talk about today. Excellent. So Adro, you guys may have heard a little bit about this, but this is what I do. This is my main job. My side hustle is also teaching at CUNY Baruch Yeshiva University. But Adro, what we do is banking access, pre-arrival or post-arrival for any international visa holders. We do both consumer banking and business banking. We're really excited in 2025 to launch business accounts for users who may be overseas but have a presence and entity in the U.S. and need to do some banking transactions here. So we help people set up accounts. We're completely fee-free, and we help move money in a lot cheaper than most other banks, including big ones like Bank of America. So we are running a lot of great promos now, including a really good sweepstakes. So if you don't have a bank for some reason, you should, and you should check us out. All right, on to the good stuff. Let's talk about U.S. finance. There's a lot to cover here, and as you probably all know, the U.S. is weird with a lot of things related to finances. We do things differently than the rest of the world, of course. Not only do we not use the metric system, but we don't use the same way the method of cashing checks or banking. We have completely different systems here. So that makes things more fun. I want to spend probably just a little bit of time on credit, checking, savings, the basics there, and then jump in and do more of a deep dive in taxes, budgeting, and then sounds like you guys want to talk about investing as well, so I can share some of my strategies for investing. Okay. Bank accounts. I think the big things I would want everyone to know, just as someone who's always lived in the US and who's traveled around a lot, is that you need a checking account. That's really required. If you don't have one, you should, because it makes moving money easier. It makes moving money faster and cheaper. It's one of the least expensive ways to receive funds from someone else and to send money. And there's no limits on how often you can use a checking account. There's no maximums, and many checking accounts also don't have minimums, so you can keep a very small amount of cash in it. If you ever plan to leave the US and go back to your home country, you can maintain your US bank account in most cases, and you probably should. So instead of closing out the account fully, you can keep the account with a small amount of money in it. Make sure that you have at least whatever the minimum amount is so that it doesn't get closed, and that you check the fine print to make sure that the bank won't charge you every month for having the account and not really using it. But for us, like we always encourage that for students. You never know when you're going to come back, and it's super helpful to have an account. It can be difficult to get a US account because you have to prove residency here. So once you have it, keep it.
Sorry for interruption, Sarah.
Yeah, please.
Is that your screen is good, but it's like only showing the slide and also the side slide. So if you can make
that is exactly okay. That better?
Yes, thank you so much.
That's what we wanted. Okay, cool. Excellent. Awesome. So other things you should think about, and when you're choosing a bank account, things to consider. Look for accounts that are designed for what you want it to do. If you want a checking account that pays interest, you are likely going to pay for that. You're going to have more money in the account, or you will have to pay a monthly fee. If you want it to be free, it's probably not going to pay interest, because that's the way that banks make money, is by holding your money and earning interest off of that. All accounts at this point, they should be FDIC insured, but if you are really lucky and have a lot of money, you have more than $250,000, spread it between accounts or use a fintech or a bank that can guarantee that money over that amount. Typically, the way that works is each individual bank is allowed to can FDIC insure money up to $250,000. If you have more than that, what they're going to do is open multiple accounts or have multiple banks that kind of pool the money together. So that may be something you need to look into if you have a lot of funds for some reason or have a lot of cash because you're making a large purchase or you've liquidated some investments or something. It is possible to avoid monthly account fees and subscription costs. You should not have to pay those. There are a lot of banks that will charge for having an account and they offer various services with it. I don't pay to have a checking account and savings account. I haven't ever done that. And if my bank ever started doing that, I'd be like, no, I'm leaving, I'm switching. If they have minimum balance requirements that don't work for me, I'm going to close that account or switch. The minimum balances are there because banks, again, make money by having money sitting in the account. So they want you to have a certain amount because then they can guarantee that they're making some income off of you. The last thing, and I don't think this is so much an issue in New York, but it is an issue in other places, is that some banks in the US, there's about 4,500 different banks in the US, not to mention all the different fintechs like Adro or others that build on top of banks. Not all of them have apps. So there are plenty of banks. My parents use a bank in Western New York that does not have an app. They barely even have a website. It makes it really hard for them to move money in the same way that I can with Adro, with Chase, with other accounts, because it's just they're not as high tech. They don't have the same features. They don't have the same tools. So that's kind of like not really an issue anymore, especially with larger banks. But if you're in a more rural area and if you're traveling around to different parts of the US, that is actually something you want to look at. Other things you want to watch out for. You should be able to avoid most of those fees. We don't charge them at Adro, but it is a very easy way for a lot of banks, especially the larger banks, to make a lot of money. Many of them will charge you just to have an account. They'll charge you fees if you opt into paper statements. You don't want paper statements anyway. You're just going to throw them in the trash. They'll charge you for ATM withdrawals if you don't use their ATMs. They may charge you if you don't have enough money in your account, you overdraft it, and which makes no sense. If you don't have enough money, why would they charge you a fee? You don't have the money to pay it, but they do. A lot of banks really kill customers on foreign transaction fees and international transfer fees as well. So that's another area where they realize they can make a lot of money because most US citizens aren't using that feature. But if you are, you want to look for a bank that gives you free transfers or lets you move money in for very low cost. All right, we'll skip over this. I'm assuming most everyone has an account, knows how to deal with that now, and hopefully you've kind of gotten through that hard part. Credit. I also hope everyone has a credit card and uses it. You need credit. You need to build it. It takes time. I learned recently, I actually didn't know this until very recently, that there's a number of factors that go into your credit score, and all of them have kind of different variables they look at. One of them is the age of credit. And in order to get an excellent rating in that area, in the age of credit, you actually have to have a credit account that is 25 years old or more, which means you cannot, it's very difficult to get an 850, a perfect credit score, until you're in your 40s. Crazy, wild. That is really just an example of credit agencies and banks wanting more data and kind of requiring that and kind of keeping you on this treadmill to improve your credit score and just spend more and spend more time with them. So that is a good case or a good argument, though, for not closing a credit card account that you have. If you have a credit card that you've been using for a while, for instance, I opened my first credit card back in college, you want to hang on to that because as soon as you close it, you lose all of that history. And that history is a really big component of that score. Of course, your payment history, whether you're paying on time versus late and how much you owe are also large components of that. But the age of credit history is like another big chunk. What's also a mystery is how the different credit bureaus calculate credit scores. It's not actually known. They don't publish their algorithm. They don't publish that formula. You can kind of guess at it. We can maybe work backwards and try to figure it out, but they all have slightly different ways of calculating it, and they don't reveal that, which is not helpful. They're all usually within a few points of each other, and you know the factors that impact it, but you just don't know exactly how they're weighted and how they change that over time. The other good news here is that you do not need a perfect credit score. If you have anything over, I think 780, it's great. It's fantastic, and you're going to get the best loans. You're going to get the best rates. You're going to get all the best features on anything that requires a credit check. So when I was going for my mortgage, I was talking with Chase and I was like, oh, is there anything I can do to get my credit? I think was like 819, which was very, very good. And they said, it's fantastic. Anything over 780, there's no point in having a higher credit score. You're already getting the best rate. You're maxed out there. So if you're already in the 700s, you're really good. And it may just take time to kind of get you bumped up to that excellent range if you're not there yet. The most important things too to maintain a great credit score, pay any debts and pay those bills on time. Even if you don't pay them in full, but you make an effort and pay on time. And if you have any issues with making a credit card payment or a mortgage payment or a rent payment or any other kind of loan payment, contact the issuer or the creditor or the lender immediately and ask for help. That's the biggest thing that you can do, is be on time. And if you have any risk of not being on time, call them. They may be able to give you some kind of a hardship notice or some way of paying part of it or delay or giving you a different due date. There's maybe something that they can do. And with credit cards especially, they can often lower the interest rate or do something to help make it more manageable for you. So it's worth trying to take advantage of that. You all know how important it is to have credit history and a credit score because we check it for everything in the US. We check it before you get a rental of a home, like you want to rent an apartment. We check it before getting a car loan or a mortgage or even a cell phone plan. Unfortunately, credit doesn't transfer over. Some companies can look at your foreign credit, but they don't really apply that or use that towards your US credit. So that's always frustrating. Other things to look for when you're choosing a credit card. I generally recommend that you really take a close look at rewards credit cards before you pay for them. There's a lot of very expensive cards out there, but they may not be worth it unless you're actually going to use those benefits. Some credit cards are $700 a year or more, and they come with quite a few perks, but the only people who are really able to take full advantage of them are people who are spending $250,000 or more on those cards per year. So if you're in that category, awesome, that is great. If you're not, there's a lot of cards that don't cost anything that have really great rewards programs. The standard for a no-fee credit card is typically about 1% cash back. And what some of those companies will do, and something that we do as well, is you can kind of flex in a few different categories. There might be some areas where you don't pay any cash back, and then there's other categories where you might pay 2 or 3% cash back. So you just may kind of adjust that model a little bit, but generally on average, a no-fee credit card should give you about 1% cash back. Once you start wanting more than that on your purchases, if you want an average of more than 1% cash back, typically those cards are going to have a small per year cost. So that's kind of the way that math works out. It's really important if you're looking at rewards cards to really check for a lot of the minimum swipe or spend fees. There's cards out there like Built, if any of you use that for paying rent. And the value behind that one is that they said if you use this Built card to pay your rent, you're not going to have to pay the credit card fee. Normally, if you pay your rent or your mortgage or something like that on a credit card, you're going to pay a 3% fee. So Built said, we'll eat that fee. And they assumed and hoped that people would use the card for other stuff, and that's how they'd make money. The problem is that people didn't really use the card for other things. So then they started introducing requirements on the card and saying, okay, well, if you're using this, you actually have to use it 5 other times. You have to spend a minimum of X per month. So they started putting in a little fine print that not everyone is reading. And if you don't pay attention to that, there actually is a fee that kicks in. Other tips around credit. You probably know these already. Don't carry a balance if at all possible. The annual percentage rates, the actual interest on these is really, really high. To kind of put this in perspective, I just took out a mortgage. The mortgage is not a great rate. It's about 6.5%. And when they walked me through all the details yesterday, they said, as a reminder, this is accruing interest at a rate of $23 per day. And that's only at 2.25 or 6.5%. Think of how quickly the interest is going to accrue when you have a credit card that has a 36% or 42% percentage APR on it. That's crazy. So that quickly gets out of control. So you really want to use a credit card as your absolute last resort if you're going to be borrowing money or kind of going into debt. You want to look at pretty much any other loan option. And sometimes we have to use a credit card for a specific purchase, and it's what we have to do. But you want to pay that off quickly because that's really, really, really expensive debt. I think the other thing that people tend to do with credit cards that can be not so good for your credit is called churning. And what that is opening and closing credit cards just to take advantage of different offers. So sign up for the Sephora card and get like 20% off today. Cool, I'll do that. And they'll have a big order. And then, okay, next month I don't really need it, so I'm going to close the account. Every time you open a new card and when you close it, there's going to be some impact to your credit. When you start a new line of credit, when you open a new account, your credit score goes down a little bit because we're doing a credit check and now you have kind of more credit. And then when you close it, you're losing that history. So it kind of dings you twice in two different ways. So the best way to build and maintain a strong credit and a high credit score is to be really thoughtful about the cards you're choosing and then using them, actually using them responsibly over a long period of time. If you do have a card that's expensive that you're not using, I think I got like one of the hotel cards or airline cards when I was traveling a lot. And when I stopped traveling as much, I said, I don't really need to pay for these benefits. I don't want to have this. In that case, I could call the credit card issuer. I called Amex, I called Visa and said, is there a different card I can switch to? Can I downgrade this to something different where I'm not paying for these features I'm not using? And in almost every case, they can change or downgrade that card so you're not paying $700, $500, $300 a year for it. So they want to keep you as a customer, even if it means they're losing that annual fee, but they're just keeping you, and maybe you'll use that card occasionally. Okay. Some other tips on using credit. I think I already said this one, but you can ask for help. If you've overspent, if you're struggling, if you're underwater, call your card issuer, see if they have options. There might be things they can do. They don't want to lose you. They don't want to lose your money. They'd rather make something off of you than nothing. So instead of seeing you jump to another credit card and roll the balance over, or try to even pay it off with a loan, which can be good options, they may be able to give you a break on the interest rate, or maybe offer some kind of a hardship program where you're paying less until you can get back on your feet. Note that some of those accommodations could impact your credit, so you want to talk it through and understand what it means, but there could be some options there, and I don't think people know that they can always ask. It's worth asking for help if you're in trouble. Okay. Taxes. All right, let's talk taxes for a little bit. I think we all know that everyone needs to file US taxes. If you're here, if you're working, if you've earned any income, or if you're a student who wants to eventually apply for permanent residency, no matter what your situation is, you're probably going to have to file taxes. Like once you start making money, once you start working, welcome. This is what we do. There is a substantial presence test for anyone who is not a U.S. citizen. So what you do is go to the IRS website, and you can actually determine, are you considered a resident or are you a non-resident for purposes of this test and for paying taxes. So it really is determined based on how many days you spent in the U.S. And then whether you were working or a student here on a visa. Generally, students are kind of excluded from this for your first 5 years of being a student. However, you still need to file U.S. tax forms for immigration purposes. One of the first things that they'll ask you when you're looking at an H-1B, or if you're looking at a green card or looking at some kind of permanent residency path, is let's see how your taxes. Let's go back through your taxes and how many years have you filed. So you want to make sure that you have that on file and have that on record, even if you don't owe anything. The good news is at least it's not going to cost a lot. It's just annoying. It's an extra thing you have to do. To figure out how much you owe, you're going to pay attention to the forms that you get from your employer or employers, plural, from your school, and from anywhere that you might get income from. So I normally get tax forms. So I get tax forms from CUNY Baruch. I get tax forms from Yeshiva. I get tax forms from Adro, the startup. I get tax forms from different banks where I earn interest on accounts. I get tax forms from the brokerage firm where I have investments if I'm earning money on dividends or from selling stocks and making money off of that. I also get tax forms if there's a capital loss. So if I sell stocks at a loss, I can also use that to kind of offset some of my taxes. Let's see, other things that I may get forms if I'm part of some kind of a business or a partnership. So some of the startup investments that I did it as part of an LLC with some friends. And so I'll get a K-1 form for those. So there's a lot of forms that you can get. And you start getting those typically in January. So in a few weeks now, we're going to start receiving those forms from all the different places that we've worked for or different financial institutions that you're associated with. Save them all. My hot tip is just create a folder, a Google Drive, a OneDrive, somewhere, and just start saving them all. If you have physical forms, take a photo of them, scan them in, make sure you have a digital copy too, just in case you lose it. You're going to want to save all of that. And also you want to probably save it year to year because you never know when you're going to be asked for that. As part of buying a house, I also had to show W-2s and pay stubs from previous years. And you may be asked for that for jobs or for other things too. So when you get those forms, treat those really carefully. You can usually receive them digitally, but some employers are very old school and will mail them to you. So preparing and filing taxes. You should get all the forms you need by January 31st. Sometimes it takes a little longer, and usually you'll be notified if it's going to take longer. So Fidelity, for some reason, took longer last year because I don't know, there was something that was taking them longer to figure out, and I didn't get some of my forms until very close to April. Taxes are due by April 15th every year. You can file for an extension. But don't do it unless you have to, because all it does is kind of just delay the inevitable. But it's necessary if you are waiting on forms or have a really complicated situation. Probably my biggest tip here is I strongly recommend using a tax accountant or tax prep software. I've taken tax prep courses in New York. I know how to file and prepare taxes. I still use an accountant. I want to make sure that it's done right. And the best thing that an accountant or a tax prep service does for you is that in most cases, they will assist in case you get audited. So if anything's ever wrong, they're going to help you with it. And if for some reason the government does contact you and say, we have questions, I want help there. I want backup. I don't want to go into that one and try to figure things out. I'd rather have the accountant or the tax service doing that for me. They're going to make sure that you're compliant. They're going to know things that you don't about the tax code. They have software that looks for updates every year. They're going to read through everything. If you've ever looked at irs.gov, you probably don't want to read it. It's real dry, and it's really complicated too. So I love my accountants. They're not always the cheapest, but the tax prep software is quite affordable. So for Sprint Tax, I know that like if you don't have a lot of forms and you have a fairly straightforward filing, if you're a student or you only have a couple of forms, the cost can be as low as $54, which is really good. If you get an accountant, it can be quite a bit more, and they will typically charge based on how many forms you have and the complexity of what you're filing. So I think it was, I used a good firm in Manhattan last year. I had a lot of forms and I have a lot of complexity. So it was closer to $1,200 for me. That's probably on the higher end. But it was great to know that if anything's wrong, I can go to them. And the other benefit was they could give me guidance and ideas about how to save money on taxes, things that I could look for or do. And they could help me do more complex stuff like helping structure a trust if I ever wanted one, or giving not necessarily investment guidance, but telling me like how to do something to kind of offset different capital gains and losses. Some other things to know. If you live in New York City, you already know that we have local taxes here. Not too many places in the US do this, but New York sure does, and San Francisco does as well. There are 16 states that do allow local or city taxes, and it means that we just pay extra. I like to think that it goes towards extra services and, of course, the benefit of living in some pretty great cities, but that is the downside of living in a place like this. Let's see, other things. There may be tax treaties with your home country that give you different breaks and benefits. Those you kind of have to read through to see what's out there. Or if you're using a tax prep service or product, it's going to factor that in already for you. It'll ask you where you're from and some of that information, and use that to determine if your country would help offset some of the taxes that you might pay in the US. All right, happy to answer more questions from there once we get into the Q&A. Let's see. I think everyone probably has spent money in the US at this point. My only tips here are if you have the option, pay by card so that you can get cash back and have more security. If anything happens with your order or something goes wrong, it's a lot easier to get your money back if you've used a card. If you have the option also, if you swipe or tap, tapping is more secure than swiping because people can use skimmers to steal the card information. If you're swiping, it is a lot harder to do that when you tap. So two tips there. Budgeting. I'll share a few things that I've learned recently that I think were kind of maybe not eye-opening, but really helpful to me. The first is that your budget is going to look different every month. I think when I've been budgeting throughout my life, I've always been really frustrated in trying to force everything to fit and make every month exactly the same. And when I went to a seminar recently and they said, you know what, that's not the reality. Every month is very different. Every month has a different number of days. Every month has different holidays or requirements or when subscriptions are due or, you know, birthdays or all kinds of things. Your budget cannot be the same month to month. But what you need to do is make sure that over the course of a year, it does balance out, or that within a certain span of time that you're not overspending, that you have enough money to cover your expenses for that immediate term. I think that was really helpful, and I think that's good advice for anyone who's sitting down to budget, is maybe look at things not just on a monthly basis, but on a quarterly basis or a half year or a whole year basis. So now, when I budget now, I actually look at it on an annual basis, and then I kind of break it down by month and then see, okay, are there some months that are going to be particularly expensive, and how can I plan for that or prepare for that? What are things that I can do to kind of save up for it or make sure that I'm in a good spot? So a good example of that is I like to stock up on a lot of stuff on Black Friday. So it's a really good time to buy things cheap. So I typically renew all my subscriptions around Black Friday. I stock up on things like coffee and tea and stuff that I can buy in bulk at the lowest price that it's available for a year. And there's lots of other things. So for me, November tends to be a very expensive month as a result. What that means that the next month in December and January, typically I've got enough stuff that I've purchased that I don't need to restock anything. So those tend to be months where my cost of living go down a bit. And so I just make sure to check that and make sure that I'm not overspending, so I can just balance out the fact that I had an expensive month and then it's followed by some cheaper months. Let's see, budgeting. You don't need fancy tools. If you like to buy tools like You Need a Budget, YNAB, or some of the other spreadsheets or different things that may be out there, feel free. But you can also just use an Excel spreadsheet. You just build it yourself. Fundamentally, all budgeting is really looking at what you spend and versus how you want to spend it, and what you need versus what you want, and making sure that things are in check. That the amount of money coming in is less than or equal to the amount of money going out. That's really what it boils down to. Budgeting tips. I think probably the one thing I wish someone had told me sooner or really pounded into my head was that I didn't need to buy everything new, and that I should live with roommates and share and try to split expenses as much as possible early on. At some point that becomes kind of annoying and you want your own space and you want your own stuff, but if you can tolerate it, one of the easiest ways to really cut your expenses are to get roommates and to kind of share the burden on as much stuff as you can, whether that's cooking together, trying to split a car, or figuring out what other big ticket expenses you can go in on as a group or as a team instead of just one person. It's well known, I think, in the U.S. that living by yourself and filing taxes singly and living solo is more expensive than living with a partner or living with roommates. And I've certainly noticed that too in my own kind of life these past 10, 20 years. It's when I've lived with roommates, I've definitely saved more. And there have been times when that's frustrating, but I kind of balance it out and say there's going to be times when I want to save more, and then there's times when if I live by myself, it's going to look a little bit different and feel a bit different. Let's see. Other tips for saving money and finding deals. Always ask for discounts. You never know what's out there. So student discounts, teacher discounts, discounts for all kinds of different roles and jobs. Always ask. Ask if there's any kind of special promo going on. Ask if you can get something for free. A lot of restaurants will do stuff like that. Let's see. Or if you have a friend who works in for a big company or can get deals, I'm shameless. I'll definitely ask my friends who work at MasterCard or who work at Google, hey, do you have code for getting discounted tickets for something? Do you have a discount code for Apple? Do you have a discount code for whatever? We're happy to share. If I have discount codes, I'm always happy to share those too. The other thing that is a great tip is buying used or refurbished tech. I bought my laptop that I use for teaching, actually like for $400 on Amazon. It's great. It's fantastic. And if it dies, I feel like I can probably swing another $300 or $400 to get the replacement. I am pretty religious about using browser plugins and checking the bank and credit card marketplaces for offers and discounts. Rakuten is great. You can always get like 1 or 2% back when you're shopping online at bigger department stores, or usually not at Amazon, but sometimes other sites like Macy's, or maybe other sites you go to regularly. And bank and credit card marketplaces will often have offers where you get $10 or 10% back if you shop at a certain store. So if I'm going to buy flowers for my mom for her birthday, I'll often go on and check and see which of my credit cards is offering some deal at a florist, and then I can get a little bit of money back on that. Sign up for emails and loyalty programs from your favorite brands. So Chipotle, Starbucks, like Chopped, all those places get discounts and tip. They'll ask you for your birthday, but they won't verify it. So you can put in whatever month you want. If you know that you like to eat Chipotle more in March than you do in August, your birthday is now March 17th. That's okay. And then I know people that kind of spread it out, so they're always getting like a free food item like every month, and instead of having it all clustered in their birthday month. So that's always an idea. Cooking is always cheaper than eating out. It's annoying. Sometimes you're like, oh, I don't want to meal prep, but we all know it. And so if you can kind of do that as a group, that helps make it a little bit more affordable. Let's see, other things. You guys know about moving money. See if there's anything else good here. Shopping secondhand is another kind of great way to find good deals. There's a lot of really amazing secondhand stores in larger cities, but there's also some really good sites online, and increasingly a lot of premium brands like Lafleur, Patagonia, and some of the other like higher end business clothing retailers will sell lightly used clothing items on their sites at a discount, and they're really good. I've bought nice stuff from Eileen Fisher and Lafleur, like suits that are fantastic and less than half the price of new. And they're often just people who bought something, never wore it, and then just sent it back with the tags on. So that's a pretty good deal. You can even find on a lot of secondhand sites clothing with tags still on it. So it's I always recommend checking there. No one will know, I promise. Okay, I think you guys know all about moving money and spending money because we do that every day. And I will also, for sake of time, kind of skip the scam stuff. We know that scams are everywhere, but that's something we deal with, and always, if you're not sure if you're getting an email or something that seems scammy, ask a friend. It's the way to deal with that. Now I want to jump into questions. I want to hear what questions you have, and yeah, what other things I can tell you about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. This has been so loaded information. Yeah, I mean, definitely we'll send the recording to everyone so that like if they want to go back, because there has been so many points. There are so many questions also. Let me just go serially to the questions and kind of like read it out for you so it's like easier to remember. 2 points which I also wanted to add, which has like again such a loaded, so many points in each slide. Definitely I agree with this audit defense on taxing, because that like saves a lot of stress whenever we get it, irrespective of what. On credit card, I found an interesting new hack recently, beyond all the hacks which we are doing already, is that let's say if I have like 5 credit cards, some of the times they are shutting down the credit card because it's not being used. So I use like some different subscription services. I mean, not plugging anything in there. There's one called Privacy, another one called Nacho Nacho, where I basically like use even like $1 monthly subscription for little things so that just the credit cards are active. So that's one little hack, that I don't want the credit cards to shut down. So I just use different services for different credit cards, and they're all active, they're all little. And I used to use Mint. Now it's Credit Karma for like just monitoring which credit card needs to be paid and stuff. But yeah, just that small note, just wanted to add.
I miss Mint. Mint was so good. Mint was a
It,
great, like, free budgeting app. Oh,
I got so pissed off
no.
when Intuit, did that. Okay, so let's jump on the questions. Let me go serially, because okay. So one person asked in the beginning, might be a naive question. ASM Goni asked that if you have 10 million liquid, that would require 10 million divided by 250K, 20 accounts. How do people protect their money at that level?
Yeah, you go to a large bank, you go to a large institutional bank, and they spread it out across a lot of different accounts. So you'd be going to like a JP Morgan Wealth Management, you'd go to, one of these, like a BMO or a Mellon, and you'd be asking them like, what's the best way to manage this? And you'd likely be putting it in money market accounts or CDs or something if you needed it to be liquid, but you maybe, you had a little flexibility and it could be locked up for a couple months at a time because you get a better rate on those. But I think if you're looking at that amount of money too, you'd probably also be considering investment options, things that could be short term, because even stocks can be somewhat liquid. There'd be things that you could invest in that would be fairly steady and safe, that would give you a little bit more of a return, or doing lending. You'd use that money for just some kind of loan and get a pretty steady return on that too.
Awesome, thank you. So
Yeah.
the next one is Tashfiq. What do you do to pay on time? Minimum balance or statement balance or total
Good one.
prevent credit score from going lower? Did you understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So with your credit card, they're going to offer. So say you've got $1,000 balance on your credit card. I've spent $1,000 this month. So typically, what they're going to do on your statement is they will say the minimum that you have to pay is something like $50. So that is the smallest amount that they will allow you to pay that keeps your credit in good standing. That kind of checks the box for an on-time payment. But what it doesn't do is obviously pay off that $1,000 that you owe. It means that interest is going to start accruing, and that means next month you're probably going to owe $1,000 and maybe 1,020 or something, like depending on what the rate of interest is. So the minimum, if you can afford to pay off the full balance, that is what you should do. Ideally, you're using credit in such a way that you are using it in lieu of your debit card, and you are able to pay it off fully when your statement comes due, or even before that time. If you can't, you can always pay any amount that is the minimum balance, the minimum amount or more. So you could pay 50, you could pay 60, and generally you should pay what you can afford, whatever that you can to try to pay down as much of that debt as possible.
Yeah, another question from Roy. Does the checking of credit score lower it?
It depends. There's both hard and soft credit pulls. So you should be able to look at your own credit score for free. So if you have a credit card, if you have, and sometimes even your bank account will let you see your credit score there. So as long as you have a social security number, you're able to go on and see that. You can also check your credit score for free at any of the three bureaus, Experian, Equifax, or TransUnion. So you can go on there. They have slight differences between them, but it'll be within 1 or 2 points. So it's free for you to check that. It is when someone checks your credit, they will do either a hard or soft pull. A soft pull is something where they're just going to look at it. They're going to do the same thing that you just did, just see it, but they're not actually pulling a deep inquiry of all the things that you've ever spent going back years. But if they do a hard credit pull, which is what they have to do for mortgages, for student loans, for car loans, for any kind of a situation where you're going to be taking money out, that hard credit pull does impact your credit score. It's small amount and temporarily, but it will knock it down a few points whenever a hard credit pull occurs. So if you're out there applying for 7 different credit cards in a row, you will notice an impact to your credit score. If you're out shopping for different auto loans and you ask multiple people to get you quotes, that may impact your credit score.
Thank you. There are two questions from Mohammed, so I'll just ask them together. So first is it a good strategy to ask issuer to increase credit limit? And the second one is that if you stop using a particular credit card for a long time, can the lender close the account? What time do they take to make such a decision?
Sure. So let me answer the first one first. So that was, can I ask for a credit limit increase? Yes, generally you can. Sometimes they will ask why, and depending on whether you have a lot of debt, if you've taken out a lot of debt, then they may say, what's going on? Is this a safe thing? They may ask for your income. They may verify your income to make sure that you're not asking for something that's unreasonable. If your income has dropped, they could also lower your credit limit or decline to increase your credit limit if they don't feel like that's appropriate and that you would not be able to pay that amount back. Technically, a credit limit is kind of based on what they think that you reasonably could pay off if you borrowed that money. So yes, it can also increase your credit limit, which is really weird and annoying because one of the factors of the credit score and credit history is that we look at how much of your credit you're using. So if you have $100,000 in available credit across 10 credit cards, then that actually, and you're only using a very small fraction of that, that actually is a good thing, which is weird. I wish we didn't really, there's a lot not to like about the way that credit scores work, and that's one of them. I wish it was structured around like really based on your income, and it's not. So the short answer is yes, you can ask for a credit limit increase. It can actually help your credit score, but you want to be careful if you're the kind of person that will see that number and spend that number. That can be really risky. Okay, and then your second question was around.
It was like, how long does if you're stopping using a particular card, like how long?
Yeah, depends on the credit card company and issuer. So they'll all have different rules and they all may, some say, I'm never going to close your account. I always want you to have that just in case. And some will say 6 months of no use and I'm going to close it. So you have to read the fine print in the agreements. They kind of do what they want and you have to dig through to find what that might look like. But I think you had a really good tip, Sian, which was just put a subscription on it. Like put your, Apple iCloud $2.99 a month subscription on one of those things. You just have to remember to auto pay it every month so you don't don't rack that up.
Yeah. Another, actually, two questions also from another person, Mohammed Majhar. So I saw a lot of people have 0% APR card and they say they jump from one to another to keep a 0% APR at all times. Does it impact credit score? What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, that credit card companies kind of see that and know that game, and at some point will stop offering you 0% APR cards. So usually those are limited offers. They're for 6 months to 12 months, and there's no interest. So if you are carrying a balance, you could kind of keep bouncing it between different cards. What's happening though is you're opening multiple credit cards. So every time you open a new card, you have that little reduction in your credit score from that hard credit pull, and then you now have a lot of different cards you have to manage, and that might not be beneficial at some point. If you ever want to close some of those cards, you're going to kill that credit history that's associated with that too. The other thing that can come into play is that if someone ever does a hard credit pull to look at your history, they're going to see what you're doing and they may ask questions about it. So if you were taking out a loan for a home or a car, they're going to say, why do you keep carrying this debt? Why are you doing this? So there may be some questions that come up around that make it harder for you to get a loan that you might really want or need at some point in the future. So that can be a strategy, but it also does leave you with a whole trail of credit cards that's difficult to manage.
Awesome. Yeah, we have 10 more minutes, guys. Feel free to ask all, like, keep coming the questions.
Yeah.
I'm doing this serially. Another question from Mohammed also is that how to be safe from identity theft. Saw some cases when people got robbed of their entire life savings due to identity theft. Can someone steal my money if they know my SSN and other info? And how do I be safe?
Yeah, number one thing you can do is have really secure passwords and change them regularly. And then set up dual factor or multi-factor authentication on your accounts so that you have to enter a code and it comes to your cell phone or it comes to your WhatsApp account or goes somewhere that you know that is secure. Those are the number one things. I've had my social security card stolen. I was robbed in Seattle and I called the Social Security Administration and said, what can I do? And they said, honestly, about like 60 to 70% of Social Security numbers in the US are compromised, and there's no way to get a new one unless you're in the Witness Protection Program, which I don't qualify for that. So it's a reality, and you just kind of have to deal with the fact that a lot of our information is out there, and the best thing we can do is keep our accounts secure and kind of check often to make sure no one's opening an account your name. If you see that, you should get a notification about it. You'll kind of notice that on a credit report. You contact your bank, contact you can, depending on what it is, you may have to contact the IRS. You may have to reach out to wherever that account was open and say, this isn't me, and you have recourse there. So if you notice any erroneous charges on your cards, contact the bank right away. The sooner that you identify that and contact somebody, the more options you have and the more likely that they can get the money back. But account security is really, I think, the number one thing, because it's much harder now for people to just open an account just because they have a piece of information, because they're also going to need your cell phone number and that two-factor authentication and some of those other layers. So if you set that up, it's going to protect you a bit. What isn't unfortunately terribly useful are some of those identity theft programs. You might get letters in the mail saying that there's a breach of information and now you can join this free service and they're going to protect your ID. They don't do much, honestly. It's better just to have really good password hygiene and to monitor your accounts. Those are the things that are going to be a little bit safer, unfortunately.
Great points. Yeah, I use probably like Bitwarden for like managing all my passwords, or like there are so many password management things.
Yes.
Then I forgot which one I use for like identity theft, something where basically they search the dark web. I think Google also has one, and they show the leakage and they also communicate with this company and try to reduce that, like this leakage of information. I forgot.
I use Dashlane for that. Dashlane is my, yeah,
Dashlane is
great.
one. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you said, like none of these are foolproof in that kind of way. And
No.
yeah. Another question from Tashfiq, about budgeting. How much of your total liquid money is safe to invest? I'm assuming this person means investing in stocks.
Yeah.
Investment is a very broad term. So yeah.
Yes. That's a great question. It depends what your goals are. It depends on your age. It depends kind of what your needs are. I always say, I think the first thing that you should do is make sure you have some emergency savings. So if you're working and you lost your job tomorrow, what would make you feel comfortable to kind of have in the bank to make sure that you could cover your living expenses until you found a new job? What would be, do you have any other backups? If you are living with family, maybe you don't need as much of a cushion, and you're able to stay there, and they'd help you, and you wouldn't have a lot of expenses. But if you're living on your own and you don't have a lot of backup, you need to make sure you can continue to pay rent and cover food and cover healthcare and things that you need for at least a few months. So everyone's kind of comfort level is going to be different there. Some people want $50,000 in an account and say that's what's going to make me feel good, and some people say, no, I could get by with a lot less than that. I don't need that much of a cushion. So that's the first thing, is make sure that you've got some emergency savings, and you should keep that in cash, keep it in a high yield savings account, keep it somewhere accessible. You could put it in a certificate of deposit account if you want to earn a slightly higher rate, but know that it's still fairly accessible to you. And then really in terms of investing, much of it will be dependent on what your goals are and how young or old you are. And as you kind of get older in your retirement age, you're going to want to kind of pull back on some of those riskier investments to make sure that you're preserving as much money as possible. But when you're young, you can, invest a larger quantity, and you may want investments that have the more potential to grow, and you may be okay with taking more risk. So for me, I'd say the majority of my money is invested. I have probably up to $50,000 in cash for savings, for emergencies, or for opportunistic investing in my case, because I always like to have some money in case a really great startup comes up and I'd like to put some money towards that. I would say that for highly risky investments, like investments in startups, if you're eligible to do that, or maybe crypto or something that's really, really volatile, you probably don't want to have the majority of your portfolio or your savings in that. Generally, most people are going to invest, when they're investing in things like ETFs or funds that are fairly diversified and relatively stable, that are more likely to grow over time with like some ups and downs and some bumps. And then you may have like a 10 to 20% of that portfolio that is more volatile and risky, and you want to try some different things or gamble on a few stocks. But if your goal is to use that money eventually to retire or to kind of save up for something big, you're going to want a little bit more stability, and you're going to want the ability to be able to pull that money into cash and feel like you haven't taken a loss at any point. Does that
Absolutely.
help?
Yeah, thank you so much. Mohin asked, how do you keep track of all the discount programs you sign up for? Sometimes it makes my inbox very messy.
Yes, that's a good one, because you do have to get those emails. That's part of getting the free stuff, is they're going to send you emails. I do like the promotions tab in Gmail. That's kind of helpful for sorting and organizing them. And I go through every morning and just like click, 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 and then delete a lot of those. If you do use Outlook or another mail program, you can set up rules to have things automatically file to a delete folder, and then just review it regularly to make sure you're not missing anything. Um, I keep a spreadsheet for some of that stuff. If there's any like subscriptions, I know all of my subscriptions are detailed out there. And then for any other programs that I'm a part of, or I want to make sure I take advantage of an offer, I'll actually have a tab within my budget spreadsheet. I'll have subscriptions, then I have like other programs, then I've got my regular budget, and then I've just got some tracking for investments and other stuff. So I just try to keep it all in one place, and then I have a date every month when I go through and check it out and like look at it and just recalculate where I'm at, if I'm meeting my goals, if I need to adjust anything, and then what the next month is going to look like.
Awesome, thank you. Vivian asked, should not spend more than 30% of credit. Is that real or myth? Also, that 30% is on carryover or monthly charges. I think this is a credit card limit question.
Yeah, so generally the lower that your utilization is, the better the credit score is. It's kind of like a sliding scale. There's no magic amount that you need to hit, but the more you're utilizing, the more risk that signals. If I'm allowed to borrow up to $50,000, or that's my credit limit, and I'm spending $48,000 a month, and kind of it's not that amount is not budging, I'm not paying that off, lenders are going to look at that and say, I don't know that I should let you take out more money, because I don't really see you paying this down. That's what everyone's risk tolerance will be a little bit different. So every lender might kind of assess that differently. But I would say yes, like 30% or less would be probably a reasonable benchmark. But you don't have to aim for 30% either. If you're at 0% or 1%, because you're good about paying down your credit cards, that's great. That gets you an even better score. The 30%, where I do hear that number used, is that is a benchmark for how much money you should spend on housing per month. So that it's a little different in New York. New York, I feel like we spend more. We kind of have to. But the goal is, if you're budgeting, you want to spend approximately 30% of your budget on housing. That's typically the comfortable amount that we talk about.
Awesome, thank you. I think we can take one or two last questions and slowly wrap it up. So Muhammad had a question: should a non-immigrant start investing in an IRA?
You can. What is different about from U.S. citizens versus non-citizens and capital gains is that your capital gains tax is higher. So I'm eligible as a U.S. citizen for a capital gains tax as low as 10%. So when I make money off of an investment, for instance, it goes up in value and I sell it, and then I have that realize that gain, I'm taxed at a lower rate than you would be. So that's the only part that's kind of not great about that. I believe the tax rate is 20 or 24% for non-citizens, so it's more. It may still be worth it, but there is that cost there. The other thing you could do is buy and hold. If you're kind of on that citizenship path, or you don't have any need for those investments, and you're happy to just buy and hold them for a really long time, that may be beneficial. And in that case, you're not going to have that tax kick in until you sell those investments. So that could be helpful. And if you're investing in an IRA that has pre-tax benefits, that could help lower your taxes right now. So there definitely could be some advantages. Where it starts to get tricky is when you start selling or day trading or actually realizing gains on those investments because that costs you more.
Awesome. I mean, guys, if you have any more questions, feel free to drop it. I think we are exactly on time. Uh, Vivian had a question. What's your first pet's name and favorite teacher? My first pet, my first pet's name is
Don't do it.
Oh, shoot. Yes, that is a good question. Well, my favorite teacher is actually Vivian. Vivian is who taught me iOS development many years ago. So
Oh,
that's
no way.
one of my favorite teachers. Glad that Vivian you joined the session. I know that a lot of people are interested in like how like this winning this chance of a ticket or this $1,000, like all this sweepstake. What we'll do is that I'll let maybe like 12 hours to process this video. We'll upload the video and we'll share the recording of this video and like whatever email, like the PDF of this slide, like the session, and also like all the details about how you can open the bank account and everything. So you'll get through the email all those information. If you don't have any other questions, guys, thanks a lot for joining on a Tuesday evening instead of going to a party and like just being so sincere and attentive and asking all these questions. And Sarah, thank you for doing this again also on a Tuesday evening.
Of course, great to meet all of you and great questions. Keep asking them. I love it. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. And I'll see you guys around.